Forced to marry an arrogant doctor, her life changed when she met his father and learned the truth. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway hummed softly as Hailey Brooks pressed her back against the cool wall outside the intensive care unit. Her mother was inside, unconscious, connected to monitors that beat out slow, uneven rhythms. Every beep felt like a countdown Hailey could not control. She had been up for 36 hours, still wearing her faded receptionist uniform with the name badge that had begun to crack around the edges. This hospital had been her workplace for 2 years, yet standing outside that ICU door, she felt like an outsider in her own life. Just as she closed her eyes to steady her breathing, the door at the end of the hall opened, and Dr. Lucas Hayes walked in with the same intensity he carried everywhere. His white coat moved sharply with each step, his jaw locked, his expression unreadable. Lucas was known across the hospital for his brilliance in the operating room and his reputation for being cold, blunt, and utterly impossible to read. To nurses, he was a storm. To patients, he was a miracle. To Hailey, he was the man now holding her mother's fate between 2 clipped sentences. He stopped in front of her, arms crossed, tone clipped in that familiar way that made her shoulders tense. Your mother's condition is stable for now, but she needs surgery soon. The insurance approval did not clear. Without extended coverage, the hospital cannot authorize the operation. Hailey felt her stomach drop. She had already called 7 different departments, begged 3 caseworkers, and filed every form she could find. She had reached the end of the system, and the system had barely looked back at her. Is there anything else I can do? Her voice sounded smaller than she wanted it to. Lucas exhaled through his nose, almost impatiently, and turned slightly as another man stepped into the hallway. Silver hair, gentle eyes, a slow and steady gait. Dr. Michael Hayes, Lucas's father and chairman of the board. His presence softened the cold brightness of the hallway like a warm lamp being switched on. Ms. Brooks, Michael said kindly, may I speak with you for a moment? Before Hailey could respond, Lucas placed a folder on the bench beside her. Think carefully before you decide, he said, his tone clipped, but something in his eyes flickered. Guilt, or conflict she could not explain. Michael gestured for her to sit. There is an option, he began gently, but it is unconventional. When he explained it, she could not breathe for a moment. A marriage, a legal union with his son, a way to place her mother under the Hayes family insurance plan, granting immediate approval for the life-saving operation. Hailey's pulse hammered in her ears. You cannot be serious, she whispered. Michael nodded slowly. I am afraid I am. The system can be cruel. This is the only path I can offer that moves fast enough to save your mother. And then Lucas, arms folded across his chest, said the words that struck her harder than the proposal itself. Do not mistake this for romance. It is just a contract. You need something, and so do we. If you agree, we proceed. If you refuse, that is the end of it. Hailey looked through the ICU window at her mother, pale and still under the warm glow of the monitors. A woman who had worked 2 jobs her whole life. A woman who deserved more than what the healthcare system had left her with. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of the impossible. A marriage she did not choose. A doctor who did not care for anything outside procedure. And a father who seemed to know more than he was saying. Hailey finally whispered, if this saves her, I will do it. Lucas nodded once, as if confirming a business transaction. But Michael placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice lower, gentler. You have more strength than you think, Ms. Brooks. And one day, you will understand why this matters more than my son lets on. Behind them, the monitor inside the ICU beeped steadily, unaware that Hailey's entire life had just shifted in. A single breath. The morning after agreeing to the impossible marriage, Hailey Brooks walked through the automatic doors of the hospital with the same uniform, the same badge, and the same exhausted eyes, yet everything around her felt colder. The monitors still beeped, the stretchers still rolled by, and the smell of antiseptic was still sharp in the air, but she sensed an invisible wall rising between her and the world she once knew. News traveled fast in hospitals, sometimes even faster than lab results, and she could feel whispers brushing against her back as she walked toward the intensive care unit. She kept her head down and focused on her mother behind the glass window. The same warm light glowed over the bed. The same oxygen line rose and fell with each breath. Seeing her mother alive offered momentary comfort, until a soft knock pulled her attention away. "Ms. Brooks," a caseworker said carefully, holding a clipboard. "We received updated information regarding your mother's coverage. Her surgery is now cleared. Preparation will begin this afternoon." The words hit Hailey like a sudden gust of warm air in the middle of winter. Relief washed over her so powerfully that her knees almost gave out. She whispered a thank you and stepped back, her heartbeat finally slowing for the first time in days. But even in the relief, she felt a stab of guilt twist inside her. This miracle had come with a price she had agreed to pay with her own future. She turned and almost collided with Dr. Lucas Hayes. He stood in the hallway, hands in the pockets of his white coat, jaw tight, his expression unreadable. He glanced from her to the clipboard the caseworker had left in her hands. "So, it went through," he said, not as a question. "Your mother will be in the operating room by 3 o'clock. There was no warmth in his tone, but there was no arrogance either. Just a clinical statement, as if he were reading her a lab report. Hailey managed a small nod. "Thank you," she said quietly. Lucas did not respond. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but instead he stepped aside to let a nurse with a chart pass. For a moment, Hailey wondered if he felt even a fraction of the conflict she felt. But then he straightened his coat, and whatever flicker she had seen vanished. When he walked away, Dr. Michael Hayes, his father, emerged from the corner. He carried 2 cups of black coffee, one of them clearly meant for her. She accepted it with both hands, grateful for the warmth spreading through her fingers. "I am glad your mother is finally receiving the treatment she needs," Michael said, his voice gentle. "How are you holding up?" The question nearly broke her. It had been so long since anyone asked her how she was doing rather than what paperwork she needed to file. She drew in a shaky breath and forced herself to stay composed. "I am doing the best I can," she said. Michael looked at her with a softness she had never seen in any executive before. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Someone who fought for her family with the same determination. The world may underestimate young women with tired eyes, but I do not." Hailey looked at him, unsure how to respond. She could not read him fully. He was kind, but there was something in his tone, something protective and weighted, like a truth sitting behind his eyes that he had not shared yet. A beeping alarm echoed down the hallway, and several nurses rushed past them. The hospital never slept, never slowed. The world of medicine kept moving even when lives cracked open under its fluorescent light. Hailey stayed by her mother's bedside until the preparation team arrived. She held her mother's hand gently, tracing the wrinkles around her fingers, praying silently that this surgery would give them more time. When the team wheeled her mother away, Hailey stayed rooted in place, watching the doors swing shut. A moment later, a nurse handed her a small plastic item that had fallen from the hospital bed. It was her mother's old bracelet, a simple silver chain worn thin over the years. Hailey closed her fingers around it, feeling its familiar weight. It was the last piece of her mother she could hold until the surgery ended. She walked back toward the waiting area and saw Lucas standing by the large window overlooking the parking lot. His face was cast in the cold morning light, and for the first time she noticed how tired he looked, how stiff his shoulders were, how he leaned slightly forward as if carrying a weight. No one else could see. When he realized she was watching him, he straightened instantly, the wall between them rising again. "Your mother is in good hands," he said. "You have nothing to worry about." But Hailey did worry. Not about the surgery, about everything else. About the life she had agreed to step into. About the marriage certificate she would sign by the end of the day. About the man in front of her who seemed to survive by hiding any trace of compassion behind a perfectly ironed coat. "Is this really necessary?" she asked softly. Lucas kept his eyes on the window. "The operation will save her life. That is necessary." Her pulse tightened. "That is not what I meant, and you know it." He finally turned toward her, his expression locked, his voice even. "You will have a roof over your head. Your mother will have medical care. You will not owe us anything beyond what we agreed on." This is a clean arrangement. Hailey held the bracelet tighter. You make it sound like I am a line item on a spreadsheet. His eyes flickered again, but he said nothing. Before she could speak again, Michael appeared behind them. Hailey, he said gently, when the surgery is over, come find me. There is something I would like to talk to you about. She nodded, not yet knowing that the conversation he promised would change everything she thought she knew about the Hayes family and about the man she was about to marry. The afternoon sun had shifted across the lobby floor by the time Hailey Brooks found an empty chair in the surgical waiting area. Her mother had been taken into the operating room nearly an hour ago, and every passing minute felt like a thin thread pulling tighter around her chest. She sat with her hands clasped, still holding the worn silver bracelet, the only familiar thing anchoring her in a day that no longer felt like her own. The waiting room television played muted news. The vending machine hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a code blue alarm sounded for a different patient, sending nurses running. The hospital was a world of emergencies, yet for Hailey, this was the only moment that mattered. She kept replaying the last few weeks. The overdue bills, the insurance denials, the caseworkers who apologized with empty eyes, and now the contract. The marriage that was not a marriage at all. She could still hear Dr. Lucas Hayes's voice from earlier, flat and unyielding, telling her that this arrangement was the cleanest solution. She could still feel the chill of his distance, the way he sealed every sentence as if emotions were liabilities he refused to carry. A sharp pain bloomed behind her eyes. She had been strong for so long, but the exhaustion finally pressed into her bones. She leaned forward, breathing slowly, fighting the wave of panic rising in her throat. Hailey. The voice did not startle her. It was familiar, warm, grounded. Dr. Michael Hayes, Lucas's father. He took the seat beside her, his steps steady, his presence calming. I know waiting is the hardest part, he said softly. But your mother is receiving excellent care. Hailey nodded, but her voice trembled. I want to believe that. I really do. Michael folded his hands, his gaze gentle. Your mother will come through this. I have seen the team work. They are thorough, and they do not take shortcuts. His reassurance settled like a small light in the dark. Hailey let out a slow breath. Thank you for being here. You should not have to go through this alone, he replied. After a quiet moment, he added, you look very much like your mother when she worries. Strong on the outside, but your eyes show everything. Hailey blinked, startled by the unexpected tenderness. Before she could respond, a soft chime overhead announced a change in the surgical unit doors. Nurses pushed carts in and out. The seconds stretched. Michael continued, I know this arrangement must feel overwhelming. You were forced into decisions no one your age should ever face. Hailey closed her fingers tighter around the bracelet. I did not have much choice. I know, he said, and I am sorry for that. But I also want you to know something important. You made the decision out of love, not fear. That matters. His words touched a place in her that had been locked away under layers of survival. Moments later, a surgical nurse approached them with a clipboard pressed to her chest. Ms. Brooks? She asked. Hailey surged to her feet, heart hammering. Yes. The surgery is going smoothly so far. We will update you again soon. The surgeon wanted you to have this. She handed over a folded note. Hailey opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable, precise, controlled. The operation is stable. I will inform you when we close. Dr. Hayes. No first name. No warmth. But the words, I will inform you, carried a weight she could not dismiss. For a man who avoided personal involvement, he had still taken the time to send her reassurance. Michael leaned slightly toward her. He does not write notes like that for families, he murmured. Usually his updates are one sentence spoken through a door. Hailey did not know what to say. She slipped the note into her pocket. 2 more hours passed. The hands on the clock completed slow, painful circles. Hailey walked from one end of the waiting room to the other just to keep her legs from shaking. When the operating room doors finally opened again, Lucas emerged. His surgical cap was still on, his gloves removed, his expression focused. He scanned the room until his eyes found Hailey. Her breath caught. He walked toward her with purpose. The surgery was successful. We removed the obstruction, repaired the damage, and her heartbeat stabilized immediately afterward. Hailey covered her mouth with shaking hands, tears rising despite her attempt to contain them. She is going to be all right. Yes, Lucas said firmly. Your mother will recover. Relief crashed over her in a wave so powerful she nearly fell. Michael steadied her with a hand on her back. Lucas continued. She will remain in the intensive care unit overnight. You can see her once she is awake. Hailey exhaled slowly, nodding. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Lucas hesitated for a brief moment, as if weighing his next words, then replied simply, You did what you had to do. She will understand. He said nothing more before turning to check his pager and heading back toward the unit. But as he walked away, Hailey noticed something she had not before, a subtle slump in his shoulders, as if he carried more than just medical responsibility. Michael watched his son disappear down the hallway, then looked at Hailey. After she wakes, come find me, he reminded her quietly. There are things you need to know before this marriage becomes something you cannot walk back from. His tone held a weight she could not ignore. As Hailey sat back down, the silver bracelet warm in her hand, she realized she had stepped into something far more complicated than a contract. The hospital lights hummed overhead, and in the quiet space between each beep of the monitor, she sensed that her mother's survival was only the beginning of a deeper story she had yet to uncover. The next morning began with the faint glow of sunrise spilling across the hospital parking lot, casting long shadows through the lobby windows. Hailey Brooks arrived early, her steps slow but steady as she walked toward the intensive care unit. Her mother was resting peacefully, monitored closely, and for the first time in weeks Hailey allowed herself a full breath of relief. But that relief was fragile. It sat beside a new weight, the marriage contract waiting for her signature before the end of the day. She stood by her mother's bedside, smoothing the blanket with quiet care. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, soft and unfocused. Mom, Hailey whispered, leaning closer. Her mother smiled weakly. You look tired, sweetheart. I am all right. The surgery went well. You are safe now. Her mother squeezed her hand. I trust you. Whatever you did it for us. Hailey swallowed hard. She could not tell her mother yet. Not like this. Not while recovery was still fragile. She kissed her mother's forehead gently, then stepped out of the room before the emotions became too heavy. Just outside, Dr. Lucas Hayes waited with the patient chart in his hand. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried the exhaustion of a surgeon who had slept very little. She woke up, he asked. Yes. She recognized me. Hailey paused. She is stronger today. Lucas nodded. She is responding well. The next 48 hours will be important, but I expect her progress to continue. There was a moment of quiet. They stood only a few feet apart, yet there was a distance between them that felt deeper than the hallway. Lucas cleared his throat. My father told me he asked you to speak with him today. Yes, Hailey said. He mentioned there are things I should know. Lucas's jaw tensed. Be careful with what he tells you. He has a habit of getting involved where it is not always necessary. Hailey held his gaze. He has been kind to me. Kindness can be misleading, Lucas said, looking away. His words unsettled her. She did not understand why he bristled whenever his father was mentioned, but she sensed it came from somewhere deeper than simple disagreement. A voice called from down the hall. Dr. Hayes, we need you in recovery. Lucas stepped back. We will finalize everything this afternoon. Everything. The contract. The marriage. He walked away without another word, leaving Hailey with a knot forming in her chest. A few hours later, after ensuring her mother was stable, Hailey made her way to the administrative wing of the hospital. The floor was polished, the walls lined with framed photographs of medical achievements and major donors. She felt out of place walking past the executives and board members, her simple clothes contrasting sharply with their tailored suits. When she reached the office labeled Michael Hayes, MD, Chairman, she hesitated for a moment before knocking. Come in, Michael called. His office was warm, lit by sunlight and soft desk lamps. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with medical journals and a few framed family photos. Michael stood by the window, gazing out at the city. Hailey, he said with a welcoming smile. I am glad you came. She took a seat across from his desk. You said you had something to tell me. Michael sat down slowly, folding his hands. I want you to enter this agreement fully aware of the truth. It is not fair for you to make a life-changing decision without context. Hailey sat straighter, her heart beginning to pound. He continued, Lucas is not cruel, even though he may appear that way. He is wounded, and he has built walls so high that even he no longer sees over them. Hailey frowned slightly. He does not seem hurt. He seems detached. Detachment is often the first sign, Michael replied gently. 10 years ago, Lucas lost a patient under circumstances that were far more complicated than the public ever knew. He blamed himself, even though the system failed her more than he did. Hailey remembered the sealed file she had glimpsed on his desk. She remembered the way Lucas shut down when she mentioned it. Was the case serious? She asked. Michael nodded. Very. It broke him in ways he has never admitted. Since then, he has followed every rule to perfection, avoided emotional involvement, and refused any personal connection that might interfere with his judgment. Hailey listened quietly, absorbing every word. Your situation, Michael continued, brought back memories he does not want to face. But it also reminded him of why he became a doctor in the first place. Hailey looked down at her hands. He does not seem to like me very much. Michael shook his head. It is not dislike. It is fear. When people stand too close, he retreats. But I saw how he watched your mother's chart. I saw how he stayed longer after the operation. That is not something he does for just anyone. Hailey felt a small shift inside her, a softening she had not expected. Michael leaned forward. You deserve honesty, Hailey. The marriage contract is built on urgency and necessity, but I want you to know, you are walking into a family where pain runs deep. Not malice, not cruelty, just unhealed wounds. A silence settled between them, heavy but strangely comforting. Finally, Michael asked, do you still feel certain you want to go through with this? Hailey closed her eyes for a brief moment. She pictured her mother asleep in the ICU. She pictured Lucas walking away earlier, shoulders stiff with a burden she now understood more clearly. When she opened her eyes, she spoke with quiet strength. Yes, I will do what I promised. Michael nodded with a look that held both respect and sorrow. Then I will support you every step of the way, he said. As Hailey left his office, walking down the polished hallway with the silver bracelet in her hand, she sensed that the marriage she was about to enter was built on far more than signatures and conditions. It was built on secrets, scars, and a truth she had only begun to glimpse. And soon, she would discover that healing did not always start in the operating room. It often began in the heart. The late afternoon light stretched across the hospital lobby as Hailey Brooks walked slowly toward the entrance, her mind still weighed down by the conversation with Dr. Michael Hayes. His words echoed inside her like a quiet thunder. Wounds. Fear. Walls so high no one could see over them. She had agreed to marry Lucas, but only now did she begin to understand the shadows surrounding him. She had just stepped past the elevators when a voice called from behind her. Hailey. She turned and saw Dr. Lucas Hayes standing near the nurse's station, still in his white coat. His posture was rigid, his expression tight, as if he were holding himself together by sheer will. I need a moment, he said, motioning for her to step aside from the hallway traffic. She followed him to a quieter corner near a row of windows. Outside, the city moved in its usual rhythm, unaware that her entire life was being rewritten inside these walls. Lucas took a steady breath. I reviewed your mother's chart again. Her vitals are stabilizing. She will need careful monitoring, but the worst is behind her. Relief washed over Hailey again, but she sensed this was not why he had stopped her. He looked down at his hands. The marriage license. The timing is set for this evening. The legal team is preparing the documents. There it was. The next irreversible step. Hailey nodded quietly. I understand. Lucas shifted his weight, his eyes flicking toward the floor before finding hers again. This will be a formal agreement. Clear expectations. Clear boundaries. I want you to feel safe. He paused. And in return, I expect privacy. And no emotional involvement. His words were clinical, cold, and painfully consistent with the man she had seen up until now. But instead of letting the chill sink in, Hailey heard something else. Fear threaded through his firmness, like a tremor in an otherwise steady hand. She swallowed. I am not here to complicate your life, Dr. Hayes. I just want my mother to recover. For a split second, something softened in his features, but he quickly masked it again. We will meet in the administrative suite at 6, Lucas said. My father will be present, since he oversees part of the process. Of course he would. Michael seemed to stand in all the places Lucas could not. Hailey turned to leave, but Lucas spoke again, more quietly this time. You should eat something before then. You have been here since sunrise. The comment startled her. It was the closest thing to concern she had heard from him. "I will be fine," she said, though her stomach felt hollow. Lucas did not argue. He simply nodded once, then stepped back as his pager vibrated. Within seconds he disappeared down another hallway, leaving Hailey alone with the echo of his unexpected kindness. She spent the next hour sitting by her mother's bedside. Machines beeped steadily. Curtains rustled with every draft. Her mother slept peacefully, unaware of the sacrifice being made outside her room. Hailey rested her head on the mattress, holding the silver bracelet in both hands. "This is the right thing," she whispered to herself. "It has to be." When the clock struck 5:30, she kissed her mother's forehead, smoothed her blanket one last time, and made her way toward the administrative wing. The corridor was quiet except for distant footsteps. The air felt colder here, more sterile, more official. When she reached the designated office, Lucas was already inside, standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, staring at the city as if bracing himself for impact. The fading sunlight reflected off the glass, casting sharp lines across his face. He did not look up when she entered. "Sit," he said quietly. She took a seat at the long conference table. A wedding license lay at the center, alongside several legal documents. A pen rested beside it, gleaming under the lamp. Moments later, Michael Hayes walked in, carrying a folder and offering Hailey a warm nod. "Thank you for being here," he said. "Let us go through this together." He sat on the opposite side of the table and opened the folder. "This is the finalized agreement. It outlines the legal protections for both of you. No one will be taken advantage of. Not my son, and not you." Lucas shifted, his jaw tightening, but he did not interrupt. Michael continued, "You will both maintain personal independence. There will be no shared financial accounts unless mutually agreed upon. And you," he looked at Hailey, "will receive full access to insurance coverage for your mother." Hailey nodded, her breath slow but steady. "We will not expect a public wedding," Michael added gently. "The legal union alone is enough." That detail eased something in Hailey's chest. She had feared being displayed beside Lucas like a contract obligation under bright hospital lights. Michael slid the marriage license toward her. "This is your decision. No one will force your hand." Hailey looked at the paper, her name printed beside his. Two signatures that would bind them both into a life neither had planned for. She picked up the pen. Her hand trembled once. Then she signed. When she finished, she slid the pen toward Lucas. He signed without hesitation, his expression unreadable but not unfeeling. Michael collected the papers, exhaled, and said softly, "It is done." Hailey felt her heart thud beneath her ribs, not with regret, but with the weight of stepping into an unknown future. Lucas finally looked at her, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. "We will figure this out. Not warm, not cold, just honest." The kind of honesty that hinted at something buried beneath years of walls and wounds. And as Hailey stood from the table, the silver bracelet warm in her palm, she understood something. This marriage may have begun as survival, but the healing, whatever it would become, was only just beginning. The evening air outside the hospital was cool when Hailey Brooks stepped into the parking lot with the signed marriage documents still echoing in her mind. The sky was turning a soft blue-gray as the city lights flickered on, one by one. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady her breathing. Everything felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life. A few minutes later, Dr. Lucas Hayes walked out behind her, his white coat replaced with a simple charcoal jacket. Without the hospital lighting, his face looked less severe, less rigid, but the distance in his expression remained. "The car is this way," he said quietly. They walked side by side in silence. Not hostile, not warm, just two people bound by an agreement neither had imagined a week ago. When they reached the sleek black sedan parked under a street lamp, Lucas opened the door for her. It was polite, respectful, yet formal in a way that reminded her this was a marriage built on obligation rather than affection. She sat down, fastening her seatbelt as he settled behind the wheel. As soon as the engine started, a soft instrumental song played through the speakers. Something gentle, something almost nostalgic. Lucas reached to switch it off, but Hailey spoke. "It is all right. You can leave it." He hesitated before removing his hand from the dial. They pulled out of the parking lot, the hospital fading behind them as they drove toward the upscale residential district where Lucas lived. Hailey stared out the window, watching streetlights pass in long streaks of gold. Her thoughts drifted back to her mother in the intensive care unit, healing slowly. That alone made everything worth enduring. When they arrived at the penthouse building, Lucas led her into the lobby. The marble floors gleamed under warm lights, and a concierge greeted them with a polite nod. "Good evening, Dr. Hayes." Lucas nodded in return. "Evening." The elevator ride was silent except for the soft hum of machinery. Hailey clasped the silver bracelet in her hand, grounding herself with its familiar weight. When they reached the top floor, Lucas pressed his thumb to a sensor, unlocking the apartment. The door opened to reveal the same penthouse she had visited briefly before, sleek, minimalist, and almost painfully quiet. Lucas stepped aside to let her in. "You will stay in the guest room. It is down the hall to the right." Hailey nodded. "Thank you." She walked toward the hallway, but Lucas spoke again, his voice unexpectedly softer. "There are a few things we should clarify." She turned back to face him. He kept a professional tone, but there was something fragile beneath it. "We will need to appear together at several events. Hospital fundraisers, board meetings, community engagements. They will expect us to look united." Hailey nodded slowly. "I understand. We do not need to pretend affection," he continued. "But we do need to appear cooperative." "I can do that," Hailey said quietly. Lucas exhaled as if relieved. "Good." She waited, sensing he had more to say. After a long pause, he added, "If anyone asks how we met, my father has prepared a simple story. We will review it tomorrow." His shoulders stiffened, as if he hated every part of this arrangement. Hailey softened her tone. "This is difficult for both of us. I know that." Lucas looked down, his hands tightening briefly at his sides. "It is not you I am concerned about," he said. "It is everything else." Before she could ask what he meant, his pager vibrated sharply. He glanced at it, his expression shifting immediately back into the focused, clinical composure she had seen in the hospital. "I have to return for an emergency case," he said. "It may take several hours." Hailey stepped aside as he grabbed his coat. "Will you be all right here?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Go. They need you." For the first time, his eyes met hers and lingered. Not cold, not detached, just searching, as if he was silently asking whether she truly understood the world he lived in. Then he nodded once and left, the door clicking quietly behind him. The penthouse felt cavernous without him. Hailey explored slowly, touching nothing, listening to the soft hum of the appliances and the occasional distant siren drifting up from the city streets. In the guest room, she placed the silver bracelet on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. The silence pressed into her shoulders. She stood and walked to the large window, looking out over the city lights. People were everywhere, laughing, dining, living ordinary lives filled with ordinary choices. She wondered what version of herself might exist in a world where insurance forms did not determine survival. A version of herself who chose love freely, without contracts or hospital signatures. Her phone vibrated. A message from the ICU nurse. "Your mother is resting comfortably. Vitals stable." Relief spread through her chest. She whispered into the quiet room, "This is why I am here." Just as she set the phone down, a soft knock came at the front door. Startled, she walked carefully across the polished floor and opened it. Michael Hayes stood there, holding a small paper bag. "I thought you might not have eaten," he said gently. "Take this. It is chicken soup from the cafe down the street. It helps on difficult days." Hailey accepted the warm bag, surprised. "Thank you. That is very kind." Michael smiled softly. "You are part of this family now, whether the path here was easy or not." She felt her throat tighten. "I do not know what kind of family I am entering." Michael nodded, his expression pained with understanding. "That," he said quietly, "is something you and Lucas will uncover together. One truth at a time." As he left, Hailey closed the door and leaned her back against it, holding the warm soup close. Tonight was her first night as Mrs. Hayes in name, if not yet in heart. And somewhere inside the hospital, Lucas was fighting to save another life, carrying burdens she had only begun to understand. The next morning, Hailey Brooks woke to the soft hum of the penthouse heating system and the faint glow of sunlight pressing through the tall curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then reality settled around her like a weight. The guest room, the unfamiliar sheets, the marriage license she had signed less than 24 hours ago. She rose slowly, washed her face, and tied her hair back before stepping into the quiet hallway. The apartment felt untouched, almost museum-like, as if no one truly lived there. She wondered if Lucas ever spent enough time here to leave anything behind besides his neatly folded jackets. She found a note on the kitchen counter written in Lucas's precise handwriting. I left early for morning rounds. There is breakfast in the fridge. We will review the public narrative this afternoon. L. Hayes. She read it twice. It was short, structured, and formal. Yet the mention of breakfast made something warm flicker inside her. She opened the refrigerator and found neatly arranged containers. Fresh fruit, yogurt, oatmeal. It was simple, but it was effort. A quiet gesture from a man who avoided gestures entirely. She chose oatmeal, warming it on the stove as the city slowly awakened outside the kitchen window. She ate standing at the counter, listening to the distant traffic, letting the moment settle her nerves. Today, she would need her strength. When she reached the hospital a little later, she went straight to the intensive care unit. Her mother was awake and smiling weakly, her color returning. You look brighter today, Hailey said. So do you, her mother whispered. I can tell something has changed. Hailey nodded, her throat tightening. Everything is going to be better now. I promise. She stayed until the ICU nurse reminded her that rounds were starting. As she left the room, she turned and saw Dr. Lucas Hayes standing near the central desk, reviewing charts with a team of residents. His posture was straight, his tone professional, but there was a heaviness in his expression that she recognized now. Responsibility layered on top of exhaustion. He noticed her and excused himself from the group. How is your mother? He asked. Better, Hailey said. Much better. That is good, he replied. I will check on her personally during my next rotation. The simple statement carried a sincerity she had not expected. She nodded, and for a moment they stood in an uneasy quiet. Then a nurse hurried toward Lucas. Dr. Hayes, it is the Carter boy, she said. His pain level spiked, and he is asking for you. Lucas nodded immediately. I am coming. Hailey followed at a distance, curious. She stopped at the doorway of the pediatric recovery room as Lucas entered. A young boy, pale and frail, lay curled on the bed. His face lit up when he saw Lucas. You came, the boy whispered. I said. I would, Lucas answered, pulling a chair closer. Tell me what hurts. The boy pointed to his chest, breathing fast. Lucas placed a steady hand near the incision area and spoke softly, his voice softer than Hailey had ever heard it. You are safe, Lucas told him. What you are feeling is normal. I will adjust your medication. You are doing very well. Hailey felt a swell of emotion rise unexpectedly. Lucas, who appeared so rigid and untouchable around adults, transformed completely around the boy. His shoulders relaxed, his voice warmed, and his eyes gentled with genuine care. This was the Lucas Michael had described, the one hidden beneath walls of fear and grief. She stepped back quietly to avoid intruding, but as she turned, she nearly bumped into a nurse carrying supplies. She trusts him more than anyone, the nurse whispered, indicating the boy. He stays late just to make sure the kids recover without fear. That truth settled deep inside Hailey, reshaping her understanding of the man she had married. Later that afternoon, as Lucas finished the last of his rounds, he found Hailey sitting in a small lounge near the nurse's station, jotting notes in a small notebook. He stopped at the doorway. You take notes? He asked. She looked up, startled. It helps me stay organized. About what happened today? He asked. About everything, she said honestly. It helps me understand the world I am walking into. Lucas stepped inside, leaning against the counter. Walking into my world is not a requirement of our agreement. It may not be required, Hailey replied, but it is inevitable. He lowered his gaze, as if absorbing the truth of her words. Thank you for helping the Carter boy, she added. You were very patient with him. Lucas stiffened slightly. He needed reassurance. That is all. That is not all, Hailey said softly. You care, even when you pretend not to. Lucas looked at her, his jaw tightening, but his eyes revealing something more vulnerable. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the chief operating officer of the hospital, Victoria Hale, walked around the corner. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, her posture straight and assessing. Well, she said with an acid smile. The new Mrs. Hayes. Already making yourself comfortable in the hospital. Hailey stood instinctively, taken aback by the condescending tone. Lucas's expression hardened instantly. Victoria, this is not the time. Oh, but it is, she said smoothly. The board wants reassurance about this sudden marriage. People are talking. They want to know that your personal life will not interfere with your responsibilities. Hailey felt her stomach tighten. Lucas replied sharply, my personal life is none of the board's concern. Victoria's gaze slid to Hailey. Just be careful. This hospital runs on reputation. One misstep, and everything can fall apart. As she walked away, Hailey exhaled slowly, her pulse still uneven. Lucas turned to her. Do not listen to her. I am not afraid of her, Hailey said. Lucas studied her, almost surprised. You really are not, are you? He murmured. Hailey shook her head. I am not here to be intimidated. I am here to keep my promises. For the first time, a flicker of respect crossed Lucas's face. A recognition. Almost a connection. He straightened. We will handle the board. Together. Together. The words settled between them, fragile but real. And as Hailey walked beside him down the corridor, the hospital lights glowing softly overhead, she felt something shift, an almost invisible thread forming between them. Something neither of them had expected. Something beginning. The next 48 hours inside the hospital unfolded quietly on the surface, but something darker moved beneath it. Hailey Brooks sensed it the way a person senses a storm long before the first thunder. The looks, the whispers, the sudden hush when she stepped into a hallway. Ever since Victoria Hale confronted her, there had been a shift in how staff members watched her. Some eyes held curiosity, some held judgment, and some held something colder. Early that morning, Hailey walked down the corridor carrying fresh flowers for her mother. A group of nurses paused their conversation when she passed, their voices dropping just low enough to hide the words, but not the tone. She set the flowers at her mother's bedside, smoothing the blanket gently, pushing the tension from her shoulders. You look worried, her mother whispered. Hailey forced a smile. I am fine. The hospital is just a little overwhelming. Her mother squeezed her hand. You have always been stronger than the world believes. Hailey kissed her cheek before leaving the room. But the moment she stepped outside, she saw two board assistants approaching, holding tablets and whispering as they eyed her. There she is, one murmured. The wife. The contract wife, the other added softly. They did not know she heard, but the words lodged under her ribs. As she walked toward the elevator, the doors opened and Lucas Hayes stepped out with a stack of charts. He noticed the tension in her posture immediately. Are you all right? He asked. Yes, she said, though her voice was tight. Lucas narrowed his eyes. What happened? Nothing important, Hailey replied. Let us not create distractions. Lucas studied her for a moment, then shifted into the calm, composed demeanor he wore around staff. I am heading to the surgical wing. I will find you later. My father wants to meet with both of us this afternoon. She nodded and stepped aside as he walked past. Even in passing, she could feel his attention lingering, concerned in a way he tried to hide. But any comfort she might have felt unraveled an hour later. When Hailey entered the employee cafeteria to buy a bottle of water, the chatter around her dipped and rose like waves. At a table near the center, a few administrative staff members huddled together, speaking just loudly enough for their words to reach her. I heard she used the marriage to get her mother's surgery covered. It is convenient, do you not think? Some people will do anything to climb up. I bet they will divorce in a few months once she gets the benefits. Hailey froze in place. Her hands tightened around the bottle. The voices kept going. Dr. Hayes deserves better, and the board needs to question why a top surgeon would marry someone with her background. Her stomach twisted. Each word chipped at her dignity, but she kept her shoulders straight as she turned and walked out of the cafeteria. She did not see the figure entering from the far doorway. Victoria Hale watching her with a satisfied tilt to her head. Victoria approached the group and placed one manicured hand on the table. Continue, she told them softly. Transparency is important. The staff members exchanged uneasy glances but continued their conversation. Victoria's presence made the toxic chatter feel authorized. Later, Hailey walked toward the main elevators, her pulse unsteady. The hallways felt narrower, louder, filled with glances she could not decipher. She tried to hold herself upright, tried to remember her mother's words, but it became harder with every whisper. That trailed behind her. Just as she reached the corner, she collided with Jasmine, the friendly ICU nurse who had supported her since the beginning. Hailey, are you okay? Jasmine asked, gripping her arm gently. Hailey inhaled shakily. People are talking. About me. About why I married him. Jasmine's expression softened. People talk about what they do not understand. And some talk because they want the story to fit their comfort, not the truth. Hailey nodded, biting back the emotions swelling in her eyes. You are not alone in this, Jasmine added. Do not let them rewrite your story. Her kindness loosened some of the tension inside Hailey, but not enough to settle the growing anxiety. That afternoon, Hailey made her way toward the board conference wing for the meeting Michael had scheduled. When she stepped inside the waiting area, she saw him seated on a leather sofa, reviewing a folder. He looked up immediately. Hailey, come sit. She sat beside him, trying to maintain composure. You have heard the rumors, he said gently. I can see it in your face. Hailey exhaled slowly. It is getting worse. I can handle tension, but this feels like a target. Michael closed the folder, his expression darkening in a way she had never seen before. There are forces in this hospital who do not want this marriage to succeed, he said. Not because of you, but because of what your presence changes. Changes? She asked. Lucas is one of the most skilled surgeons here, Michael explained. But he keeps himself isolated. People who want influence do not like unpredictability. Your marriage disrupts their assumptions. She absorbed his words, a new understanding settling inside her. Before she could speak, the conference room door opened and Lucas stepped in, removing his gloves as he approached. Sorry I am late, he said, taking the seat beside her. Then he noticed the quiet tension in the room. What happened? Michael answered him calmly. People are talking. Inappropriately. Lucas's expression hardened instantly. Who? Too many, Michael replied. But it is not just talk. Victoria is fueling it. Lucas's jaw tightened. Of course she is. Hailey placed both hands on her lap, grounding herself. I can handle gossip, she said softly. But this feels bigger than gossip. Lucas turned to her, his voice controlled but fierce. I will not let them tear you apart. She looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his tone. Michael rose from his seat. We will address the board. We will shut down the rumors before they spread further. Lucas stood as well. And I will speak with Victoria myself. Hailey's pulse quickened. She had never seen Lucas angry, not like this. Not cold and sharp, but protective in a way he could not hide. For the first time since the gossip began, she felt something steady beneath her feet. Not safety, but solidarity. As they walked toward the boardroom together, the whispers outside faded just enough for her to breathe again. And though she did not fully understand the depth of the battle unfolding, she knew one thing for certain. This hospital had underestimated her, and it had underestimated Lucas even more. The board meeting ended with polite handshakes and formal phrases, but Hailey Brooks felt the tension lingering in the air like static electricity long after the conference room emptied. Dr. Michael Hayes had defended her with calm authority. Dr. Lucas Hayes had spoken firmly, shutting down every rumor with precision. Yet even as they walked out together, Hailey sensed that the hospital's whisper network had not been silenced. It had only gone quiet enough to gather strength again. By late afternoon, the atmosphere around her began to shift in a strange, unsettling way. Nurses who once greeted her with warmth now avoided eye contact. Administrative staff offered tight smiles that did not reach their eyes. Conversations paused when she walked by. The feeling of being watched followed her from hallway to hallway. She tried to shake it off. She focused on visiting her mother, organizing her things, keeping her mind clear. But the unease stayed with her like a shadow. When she stepped out of the intensive care unit around 5 o'clock, she found Lucas waiting near the nurse's station, arms crossed, shoulder tense. There is something you should know, he said. Her stomach tightened. What happened? Lucas gestured for her to follow him into a quiet alcove near the stairwell. His voice stayed low, controlled, but there was an edge beneath it. I just came from a meeting with the chief operating officer, he said. Victoria claims there are concerns about your motivations. The word stung, even though she had heard far worse in the last day. Concerns? She is suggesting, Lucas said slowly, that you used this marriage to manipulate the system, that you sought personal gain. Hailey felt her chest tighten. That is not true. I know, Lucas said, sharper than intended. He paused, adjusting his tone. I know it is not true, but the narrative she is spreading is gaining traction. Hailey looked down at her hands. People believe what they want to believe. Lucas hesitated, then added, Victoria is pushing the board to question your position here. She is implying that you present a conflict of interest. Hailey froze. I work at the reception desk. What conflict could I possibly create? Lucas sighed, rubbing his forehead. This is not about your job. It is about influence. Her pulse quickened. Influence. A word she had never associated with herself. He continued. She told the board that you might be leveraging your proximity to me for access to confidential information. The accusation felt absurd, yet terrifyingly powerful. Hailey stepped back. This is getting out of control. Lucas watched her carefully. We will address it. She shook her head. You cannot fix everything. His jaw tightened. I am not trying to fix everything. I am trying to protect what we agreed to. The reminder stung. Not because he meant it harshly, but because it was true. Their marriage was still an arrangement, even if the lines between duty and care were blurring in ways they both tried to ignore. Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened across the hallway. 2 staff members stepped out, whispering urgently. Their voices were low, but not low enough. I heard her mother's bills were cleared the same day she married him. Of course they were. That is how these things work. She knew exactly what she was doing. Hailey's breath hitched. She turned her face toward the wall, trying to shelter herself from the sting of their assumptions. Lucas heard it too. His expression darkened. I will make them stop, he said. No, Hailey replied quickly. If you confront every rumor, it will only grow. Lucas looked frustrated, unsure of where to place the anger gathering beneath his calm surface. What do you want me to do? He asked. Hailey swallowed hard. Let me handle this. His eyes narrowed. On your own. I have handled worse, she said quietly. He studied her for a long moment. She expected him to protest, to insist on control, but instead he nodded slowly. Then, I will respect that, he said. But if it escalates, I will intervene. There was a promise in his voice, one he did not fully understand himself yet. She stepped away from him, needing air, needing space to breathe. As she reached the end of the corridor, a new sound rose behind her. Not footsteps, not whispers. A notification pinged on her phone. She lifted it, expecting a message from the ICU nurse. Instead, her stomach dropped. It was a forwarded screenshot from an unknown number. A thread from an internal hospital messaging group. Dozens of comments. Speculation about her marriage. Accusations. Cruel assumptions about her character. Her financial status. Her intentions. Some even suggested the marriage was part of a cover-up involving Lucas's past case. Hailey's throat tightened painfully. This was no longer simple gossip. This was an attack. She backed into the nearest wall, her breath shallow. Her vision blurred for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down at once. She thought she had been prepared. She thought she could handle whispers. But this was different. This was a targeted attempt to break her. And as she stared at the screen, she realized something she had not admitted until now. Someone wanted her gone from this hospital, and they were willing to tear apart her life to make it happen. The moment Hailey Brooks saw the cruel messages spreading through the hospital's internal network, her breath caught and refused to return. She stepped into an empty consultation room, closed the door behind her, and pressed her back against it as her pulse thundered in her ears. Every sentence on the screen felt like another cut to her dignity. She reread the worst line, her hands shaking. She married him for money. Everyone knows it. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to stay still, to breathe, to gather enough strength not to collapse under the weight of false assumptions. She had fought too long and too hard to let someone else rewrite her character. She wiped her eyes, steadied her shoulders, and walked back into the hallway. She did not expect Lucas Hayes to be standing there. His eyes went immediately to her face, flushed, strained, and barely holding together. What happened? He asked, his voice low and urgent. Hailey opened her mouth, then closed it, unsure where to begin. But Lucas's gaze dropped to her phone, still lit up with notifications. He reached gently for it. May I? She hesitated, then handed it to him. As he scrolled through the messages, something cold settled into his expression. Not detachment, not distance, a controlled fury. He exhaled through his nose, jaw clenched. They crossed a line. Hailey felt her throat tighten. It is not just gossip anymore. It is an attack. They are trying to push me out. Lucas lifted his eyes to hers. Who sent this to you? I do not know. The number is blocked. Lucas tapped the screen again, scanning more comments. These accusations are not coming from random staff. They are too coordinated. Someone is feeding them information. Hailey swallowed. Victoria. Lucas nodded once, not in surprise, but in confirmation. She has wanted control of this hospital for years. Undermining you is her first step in undermining me. Hailey closed her eyes briefly. I never wanted to be part of some power struggle. Lucas's voice softened. I know. Michael Hayes stepped into the hallway at that moment, instantly sensing the charged tension. What happened? He asked. Lucas handed him the phone. Michael read the messages slowly, and as he did, the sorrow in his face transformed into something Hailey had never seen from him before, a deep, moral outrage. This is unacceptable, Michael said. Hailey, no one should be subjected to this. Not in my hospital. His hospital. His responsibility. Hailey felt a rush of emotion, gratitude, relief, and something like fear that she could be the center of such fierce defense. We will address this immediately, Michael said firmly. I will call for an emergency review with the board, and I will ensure these messages are traced back to their source. Hailey shook her head weakly. I did not want any of this. I just wanted my mother to survive. Michael placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. And she did, because you fought for her. But now you must fight for yourself. The words steadied her. Lucas stepped closer. Come with me, he said. There is something we need to fix right now. She followed him down the hall, unsure what he meant. He stopped at the nurse's station where the false whispers had begun. He looked at every person there, nurses, techs, administrative staff, with a steady, piercing gaze. My wife is off limits, he said, his voice controlled, firm, and carrying authority that silenced the entire unit. Any further defamation, any rumor, any whisper, will be addressed through the full disciplinary procedures of this hospital. No one spoke. No one even breathed. It was not a threat. It was a declaration. Then Lucas turned to Hailey. You do not fight this alone, he said quietly. Not anymore. Her breath trembled as relief washed over her in a slow, unexpected wave. For the first time since the rumors began, she felt something shift. Not in the hospital, not in the staff, but in the space between her and the man who had once kept walls higher than anyone could climb. Lucas did not reach for her. He did not pretend affection or offer empty comfort. But his presence beside her, steady and unwavering, was something she had not expected to find. A kind of protection, a kind of partnership. And as they walked together toward the boardroom where truth would be demanded at last, Hailey realized the tides had turned. Not because the hospital changed, but because Lucas had. The emergency board review convened in a smaller conference room that evening. The glass walls reflected the dim hospital lights, giving the space a tense, waiting silence. Hailey Brooks stepped inside behind Dr. Lucas Hayes and Dr. Michael Hayes, her shoulders squared even though her pulse beat unevenly. Board members sat stiffly around the oval table, tablets and folders arranged like armor. At the far end, Victoria Hale stood with her arms crossed, her expression composed, but her eyes sharp with expectation. Michael opened the meeting with steady authority. We are here because harmful, unverified accusations have circulated through our internal system. These attacks targeted Mrs. Hailey Hayes and, by extension, the integrity of this hospital. Murmurs rippled across the room. Victoria cleared her throat. With all due respect, the staff has concerns. Their communication reflects uncertainty regarding the sudden marriage between a top surgeon and a receptionist. Lucas cut in, voice controlled. You encouraged the uncertainty. Victoria lifted an eyebrow. I merely listened. Michael slid a printed file onto the table. Then perhaps you can explain why many of the messages originated from accounts linked to your administrative teams. A few members turned sharply toward her. Hailey stood quietly, hands clasped, absorbing each reaction with steady breath. She was not here to accuse. She was here to let the truth stand on its own. Victoria shifted. My team only shared what they believed was unusual. Michael leaned forward. What they believed, or what you led them to believe? A silence stretched. Lucas spoke next, his tone sharper than anyone had heard from him in a board meeting. This hospital prides itself on ethical standards. Spreading unverified personal accusations violates those standards. My marriage is legal. My wife has done nothing wrong. This ends now. The finality in his voice settled heavily in the room. Victoria attempted to recover. Dr. Hayes, emotional decisions will not help us. Nothing about this is emotional, Lucas interrupted. This is professional accountability. The board chair raised a hand. We have reviewed the data from our IT department. The messages indeed originated from administrative lines under Ms. Hale's supervision. Whether intentional or negligent, the behavior is unacceptable. Victoria's composure cracked for the first time. The chair continued. Effective immediately, Ms. Hale, you are placed under internal review. Access to non-essential systems will be restricted. Victoria inhaled sharply, but she did not speak. The board dismissed her with a brief nod. She left the room with clipped steps, her silence louder than her usual confidence. When the door closed behind her, the board chair turned to Hailey. Mrs. Hayes, we apologize for the distress caused. This hospital will not tolerate harassment of any kind. Hailey nodded politely. Thank you. I want to focus on supporting my mother's recovery. That is all. Her calm sincerity softened the room. Even board members who had doubted her earlier now regarded her differently. The meeting adjourned shortly after. Outside the conference room, the hallway felt lighter, the oppressive tension finally lifting. Hailey exhaled slowly, realizing how long she had been holding her breath. Lucas stepped beside her. You handled that with more strength than anyone expected. She met his gaze. I did what I had to. He nodded once, not with his usual distance, but with genuine respect. Michael placed a gentle hand on Hailey's shoulder. You protected yourself with dignity. I am proud of you. His kindness warmed something in her chest. As they walked toward the elevators together, the hospital around them returned to its steady rhythm. Machines beeped. Nurses hurried past. Life continued. But inside Hailey, something had shifted. She had entered this place as a woman fighting for her mother. Now, she stood as someone who had defended herself. Quietly, firmly, and without bending. This was not just survival anymore. This was strength. The next morning arrived with a quiet calm that felt almost unfamiliar. Hailey Brooks stepped out of the penthouse bedroom and found the living area filled with soft daylight. She had barely slept, replaying the events of the board meeting, the accusations, and the unexpected strength she had found within herself. She thought Lucas would already be at the hospital, but she found him in the kitchen instead, sleeves rolled up, reviewing a patient file while waiting for the coffee machine to finish brewing. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. Good morning. His tone was different today, gentler, grounded, as if the wall he always carried around himself had thinned just enough for sincerity to slip through. Good morning, Hailey replied. Should you not be at morning rounds? I postponed them, Lucas said, closing the file. I wanted to talk before we leave. She felt a small knot form in her chest. About last night. About everything, he said simply. Hailey walked further into the room, but stayed near the dining table, giving him space. Lucas inhaled slowly before speaking again. You showed strength yesterday that many people in that room did not expect. And I should have stepped in earlier. I should have seen what Victoria was planning. You had no reason to know, Hailey said softly. Lucas shook his head. I had every reason to know. I have worked with her for years. I should have recognized the signs. There was no defensiveness in his voice. Only responsibility. He handed her a cup of coffee, warm and steady in his hand. She accepted it, surprised that the simple gesture softened something inside her. I cannot undo what happened, he continued. But I can change what comes next. Hailey looked up, unsure what he meant. Lucas exhaled. I cannot offer a perfect home or an effortless marriage. But I can promise respect, protection, and transparency. He paused. You deserve at least that. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. Her throat tightened slightly, but she answered steadily. I do not expect perfection, Dr. Hayes. I just want a life where we are not at war every day. Lucas nodded, the faintest sign of relief crossing his face. Then we will make that life, he said. Not a vow, not a romantic confession, but a clear, deliberate commitment. A beginning. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen and sighed. They need me in the cardiac unit. He picked up his coat, then hesitated at the doorway. After work, he said, I will stop by the ICU with you. We will check on your mother together. Hailey nodded, touched more than she could express. Lucas left quietly, closing the door behind him. Later that day, Hailey walked through the hospital with a steadiness she had not felt since this ordeal began. Staff members glanced her way, but the hushed tension was gone. Respect, cautious but undeniable, replaced it. She visited her mother, talked softly with nurses, organized her notes, and even helped an elderly visitor navigate the maze of hallways. Step by step, she reclaimed her sense of belonging. By late afternoon, as promised, Lucas joined her outside the intensive care unit. He looked tired, but present. Fully present. "How is she?" he asked. "Stronger," Hailey said, smiling faintly. Lucas nodded. "Good. Then let us check on her." Together they walked toward her mother's room. Not as strangers. Not as two people bound only by necessity. But as partners, quiet, tentative, learning each other one truth at a time. And for the first time since their signatures touched the marriage license, Hailey felt something settle gently inside her. Maybe this contract was not the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning of something with room to heal. The late evening lights inside the hospital glowed softly as Hailey Brooks and Dr. Lucas Hayes stepped out of the intensive care unit together. Her mother was stable, smiling more, and beginning to regain strength. For the first time in weeks, Hailey felt a quiet hope blooming inside her. They walked down the hallway in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, no longer strained or distant. Lucas paused near the lounge area and turned to her. "There is something I want to say before we go home," he said. Hailey stopped, waiting. He drew a slow breath, as if choosing each word with care. "When this began, I treated you like a contract. A responsibility. I thought that was the safest way to keep everything under control." His voice lowered. "But I was wrong." She felt her heart tighten. Lucas continued. "You faced judgment, attacks, and pressure no one should endure. And you did it with dignity. You protected your mother. You protected yourself. And you even protected this hospital, though it did not protect you." His expression softened. "I respect you. More than you know." Hailey felt warmth rise behind her eyes, but she held herself steady. "I only did what anyone would do for the person they love." Lucas shook his head gently. "Not everyone would have done what you did." The honesty in his tone settled between them, quiet and sincere. He looked down briefly, then met her eyes again. "Our marriage began as necessity. But going forward, I want it to be something we both choose. Not because of a contract. Not because of the hospital. But because we decide to build something real." Hailey's breath caught, not from shock, but from understanding. She had seen glimpses of the man behind the walls, the careful, wounded, fiercely devoted version of Lucas that few ever saw. She nodded slowly. "Then let us build it honestly. One day at a time." Lucas exhaled, a quiet sign of relief, and for the first time, his smile reached his eyes. "One day at a time," he repeated. They began walking toward the exit, steps aligned, the tension of the past finally easing. As they reached the parking lot, Hailey looked back at the glowing hospital windows. It was the place that had broken her, tested her, and forced her into an unwanted marriage. But it was also the place where her mother survived, where truth was revealed, where Lucas changed, where she discovered her own strength. Hailey turned to Lucas. "Let us go home." And for the first time, the word home did not feel heavy or strange. It felt like possibility, quiet, healing, and theirs to shape.